Hey,
Jim, how are you?
I'm very good. Is Michael there yet? I'm just,
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just trying to see where I am.
in a very sunny climate, apparently.
yes. This is Between Two Palms. It's the wrong
Yeah,
show.
it is.
I'll be as rude as possible.
Why does not? Why is this not letting me start? Okay, there I am.
Oh, look, Blondie. It's Blondie.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be gray, but it turned out blonde, so they have to dye my hair. I mean, they have to put in crap to make it grayer.
It's very difficult to do that. You know what, for Family Tree, I wanted to
know.
go like white blonde and it went almost gray, but it's quite hard to do. It's one of the few colors you can't dye your hair naturally.
Well, it did not turn out great, so that's how it goes.
Looks good from here.
Well, it looks fine if I was supposed to be blonde, but I'm not supposed to be blonde. So I don't know. It's a mess. But anyway.
Well, it's still a pleasure to see both of you.
Yeah, you too, Will. And Jim, your book is so fucking funny.
Oh, thank you.
I'm in mid-read myself. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
It's so easy. It's a fast read. It's a great read.
It's quite conversational, isn't it?
It really is. I really felt like I was, you're really good at that. Like,
well,
kudos
thank
to you.
I appreciate it. Please rate and review on Amazon because that helps the algorithms. And as you know, all the money is going to charity. So
yes.
Oh, that's so cool. And I
so,
already did rate and review. So
you friend, you star.
uh-huh.
I haven't checked it in a while, but no, it's God, it's hard. I mean, you know what it's like writing screenplays and writing television stuff. That's a craft, really, isn't it? It's a craft. I mean, once you've got the format, you know how to do it. But God, writing a book, I have such new admiration for novelists and people that do that for a living.
I want to talk more about it. When do we officially begin this? Are we started already?
We're started. This is good.
Oh.
It's fun to see people pop on.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hang on. I got hair and makeup. Hang on a second.
Because I want to hear more about how do you just sort of write what you feel like and then go back and do more of it later?
Like for the book, you mean?
Yeah, like start in the middle and then maybe do the beginning or what?
No.
I mean,
no, I structured it around that thing I did for the Screen Actors Guild, just in that theatre, and I told silly stories, and I structured it around that, and I thought that was what it was going to be. It was going to be a one-man show, and I just said, little snippets, and each has a kind of wrap up and not a moral, but a conclusion from what happened, and then as I wrote it, it sort of became a bit more linear. It became a bit more linear, and then and then it sort of actually some themes started to come through, like search for family and conclusions about what it all means. But that, I think the timing was perfect because we went into lockdown, so it really would have taken me 5 years probably, but it took me 5 months.
Wow.
that's wonderful. I spent my lockdown doing my father's estate.
Well, now's the time to write your book then.
All right, I'll ask you guys
probably.
the respective question I ask everybody, which is, how did you first find your way into acting? Which obviously I know quite a bit about yours now, Jim, but if you want to.
Yeah. Michael, after you.
Well, third grade, I got to play Happy and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So that's probably how it began. And I really didn't even want to play Happy. I wanted to play like Goofy or Sleepy or something. And the teacher said, "You're always so happy." So that's what I gave you. And I thought, typecasting, I don't like it. But anyway, that's how it sort of started. And then I don't know if we ever talked about this before, Will, but I grew up in Defiance, Ohio, which is just General Motors town, basically. And it still does make, I think, General Motors engine blocks. But our church, the First Presbyterian Church of Defiance, the kids put on like a little marionette show. And that's sort of how it all began. And it was weirdly only the boys put on the marionette show. It was like it made no sense, but the boys put on the marionette show. I don't know what the girls were doing, but they were doing something else. And that's sort of where I kind of got the bug, I think, was getting to do that.
I got the title for your book, No Strings Attached. There you go. You got the title.
There you go. Done.
That's all you need. That's
People
great.
love to hear about my marionette stories.
My marionette. That's half the book. That's the first
It really
half of the book.
really is. And
Marionette.
that's sort of, and that kind of led to, I did magic shows. And I mean, I was, just the most popular kid in school, as you can imagine. I did magic shows in high school for like old folks and birthday parties. And every time, whatever I got paid, I bought a new trick, because that's how you do magic. You just buy the trick. You don't learn sleight of hand. That was not for me. I bought, whatever, the box that you pull things out of and all of that. And then I built illusions in my basement. So I made things where I could shove swords through my little brother, but they weren't swords. They were conduit pipes, things like that, because that's what we had. And then I did community theater growing up, and that we had a great community theater. By this time we'd moved to the suburbs of Chicago, and did great community theater there, children's theater. And then I got to do some of the adult plays, and that's sort of how it all began. Yeah, and then I went to Northwestern, but I tried to do some commercials. I did a couple. And then when I moved to LA, I became involved with the Groundlings Comedy Theater, and that's sort of where it all began, as far as professional stuff. Even though we didn't get paid or anything like that. That's where Christopher Guest saw me performing an improv show, and that's how I got cast in Waiting for Guffman. So that's sort of how it all began, in a nutshell.
I used to buy tricks too, but I think they were different.
Oh,
Well, there were illusions.
all right.
But there were illusions involved as well.
Okay, fair enough.
I love it. I find magic amazing to me. Because I don't know how it works. So whenever I see any magician at a party or whatever, I'm literally like a child, because we're so jaded watching theater, films, TV. We know how it works. I know how what happens, and it's like you can't really enjoy it as a kid anymore. But magic, I'm literally like, I have no idea how you do that. I can't even begin to imagine how you do that. Unless it's really bad.
I think if you saw my act, you could probably guess most of it.
Although that said, when I was 6 years old, I got into trouble because there used to be this guy called Uncle Stan the Magic Man, who used to go around the kids' parties. And I'd seen his act a few times because I'd been to a few of these kids' parties. And I started heckling him. I think I was 6.
Oh no!
Saying, I know that comes out of there. And so I was never very popular with Uncle Stan, but it's probably good.
Uncle Stan the Magic Man did not care for you.
No, and I'm quite glad, because I think he was a bit dodgy anyway.
Yeah, he was not going to get into any of your boxes.
Exactly. we've taken the show low, and we'll go low. Is Northwestern the one that's in Evanston?
Yes, it is.
Evanston. That's where my infinitely better half is from, Annie Cusack. The Cusack family.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah,
they're all from Evanston. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all tall. I don't know about Annie, but boy, John sure is.
Annie's about my height, so that's quite tall. Well, 5'9", that's average. It's not tall at all.
I don't know why I lump them all as being tall, but because I just met John Cusack.
It's true. Actually, the youngest, Susie, isn't, and Annie's average height. But yeah, you're right. The boys are huge.
Yeah, they're all Chicago people. That's right.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
So what's your nutshell version of your story, Jim?
My version, I feel a bit of a fraud really, because it's all in the book. So, I didn't want to be an actor. I wanted to be a soccer player, a professional footballer. And then by about the age of 13, 14, I realized I was way too useless to do that. And so I kind of gave up that illusion. And then I got bored at school. I was actually quite good academically, but I got bored very easily. And it was a very traditional kind of Latin, Greek, and all those really boring things. So I auditioned for the school play a year early. I think I was 15. And to my horror, got cast, or shock, I should probably say. And I remember what was great was that they imported a couple of girls from another school, because I was at an all-male boarding school. So it was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. There's girls around. So that was nice. But then waiting in the wings on my first ever entrance into the play, I remember feeling that absolute sheer terror. Just adrenaline coursing through my body. I'd never felt anything like it before in my life. I was terrified, but I also knew at that moment it was what I was going to do for the rest of my life, with quite a degree of certainty. And it was odd because I didn't find out until later that I had any connections to show business in my family. I thought that I was completely the black sheep. And then in my 20s, I discovered this whole line on my father's side that I knew nothing about. They were all actors, comedians, singers, and quite roguish. And my grandfather had a vaudeville act with Charlie Chaplin in his young days. And actually, he offered him a contract to come to Hollywood. When he came back, they had dinner, and my grandfather went to his father, my great grandfather, obviously, who said, "Oh, no, there's no future in that film business. It's a passing fad." So he never went. So I always felt there was a little bit of a romantically speaking, there was a bit of a wire left hanging that I could pick up a generation, having skipped a generation.
Yeah, you literally have it in your blood. Boy,
yeah,
everybody.
it was very odd to discover that, because I was like, where did this come from? You know, and because I really did. I knew I wanted to do it. And I was quite a shy, introverted kid. So it wasn't like, you know, it was obvious he was going to be a show off. And then finding out, it was amazing to find all these relatives that were involved. And I felt a real affinity to it, far more than the ones that weren't involved. I felt like that was my real family. And of course, they're all real family, but and in fact, most of them were all on the illegitimate side, because it goes back, there's an illegitimate strand of the Piddocks and the legitimate, and the legitimate side were rather dull and stuffy and nasty. So the bastard side were much more interesting. Good breeding means very little.
Yeah, that's a fascinating story about your family and all the secret family and all of that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, what rogues. I mean, to go on tour to Australia with your wife and 3 kids, have an affair, be there for whatever it was, 6 months, a year, and then bring the mistress back on the same boat and set her up in a house round the corner from your house and raise 3 kids with her. I mean, I don't know whether that's ballsy or just fucking stupid. I mean, it's just... And then he got caught. Someone wrote a letter about 12 years later. Someone wrote an anonymous letter to his wife, and it all kicked off. And by the way, to this day, the descendants are not talking to each other.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, bizarre.
Well, from an acting standpoint, did both of you have an immediate affinity toward comedy, or did you consider drama?
When I was in high school, I remember you do these little speech team things and, tour the state and what have you. And at the beginning, I only did drama. I did like Long Day's Journey into Night, and I just remember coughing a lot. And then when I switched to comedy, I started to, do much better. And people seem to enjoy it. So I think that's sort of where it began. And I took this writing class in high school, a comedy writing. We did comedy writing, like sketch comedy writing, and our audience were all the kids in detention. So, and if you could make the detention kids laugh, we did pretty good. So that's sort of how it began.
Captive audience.
I know, they were a captive audience. It was kind of, and if I think like, well, for them, they were probably stoned anyway, so they probably just slept. but it worked out well for us too, because like you said, they had to watch. So if we could get them to laugh, we're doing pretty good.
The stoner, that's your crowd, the stoner crowd. My demographic.
At least it was then.
My first demographic, the stoner crowd.
The bad kids.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I know that you worked in the theater predominantly to begin with, so you did a little of everything.
Yeah, I did. I was actually naturally shoved into comedy because I have very few natural gifts, but one of them was timing, and I seem to have that right from the beginning. And I don't think that can be taught really. And that was the one gift I had naturally. So at drama school, I was even always cast as the funny guy, the old, I was never playing someone my age. I think they did cast me in the Scottish play just to see whether I could. They cast me in a couple of romantic lead parts. And then the Scottish player played the king, and actually I was all right at that, but the romantic lead thing, I was just awful. I just never wanted to do Romeo or Hamlet or any of those. I just prancing around in tights. I would have done it for the laughs, but not for much else. And then so it was generally comedy, and then once I was doing film and TV, it always alternated, and now I probably do more drama, bizarrely, than comedy. I think that happens to a lot of comic actors. I think, you know, you see the big names like the Will Ferrells and the Bill Murrays, that they often kind of want to, and Jim Carrey, go into drama, or they end up doing that. I don't know whether it's because comedy is a young man's game. I don't know what that is about, or you just want to do something with more weight to it and bring the humor to a drama role. I have no idea.
Let's see, a question I've been getting good results on. Is there someone that you worked with who you actually had to fight to keep from fanboying out when you met them?
For me, it was Catherine O'Hara, for sure. It was like Waiting for Guffman. I remember meeting her. We shot it outside of Austin, but I met her in Austin. And I remember I thought, I didn't know if I was going to be able to speak because I loved her so much. And I thought, like, please, please, please don't be a bitch. And she was so nice and so warm, and, you know, asked questions. And right from the beginning, you feel like she's your best friend. And yeah, that was a tough one. And even after her being nice and everything, I could still barely talk to her because I loved her so much.
Wow.
How about you, Jim?
Well, Michael Hitchcock was the first, really.
That's why you never talk to me now.
Exactly. I just get tongue-tied. I completely. To be honest with you, there's so many. I mean, obviously, I talk in the book about Eric Idle because he was my idol growing up. I mean, Monty Python, they were all my idols, but I particularly liked Eric. So to be cast 25 years ago in a film with him and have all my scenes with him and Naomi Campbell, that's a weird trio.
Yeah.
And then I was very apprehensive at first. I mean, I was like, it's like meeting a Beatle. I was in an elevator once with Ringo Starr.
Wow.
And I just didn't know what to say. All I was thinking was, God, you're really fucking small. But I couldn't say that.
Is he really? Is he small?
He's very small, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And George Harrison, I've sat next to at a play, and I actually got to know a little bit. But anyway, but so it's like meeting a Beatle, meeting Eric. And I mean, it's just been one of the delights of my life that we hit it off instantly and become the closest of friends, and he wrote the foreword for the book. I go on vacations, you know, with him and stay, you know, he's just become a really great pal. But there have been so many. I mean, I think Michael Caine, I was really in awe of, you know, in awe growing up. So that when I know I had a small scene with him, but he had to call me sir. That was so great. And he was already a knight himself by then. So he said, no, sir, I did do that. So that was great. But he was fantastic, just like a trooper. It was literally like we were both totally on the same level, just sit and chat, no sense of I'm a star and you're coming in to do a day's work on this film, which was The Prestige.
And then you worked with George C. Scott too.
I did. He was the first major star I worked with, and he was fucking intimidating. I mean, he was so gruff, you know, and so brusque with everybody. Let's get in here and get out. I've got to go home. You know, it was just so kind of, yeah. And he was drunk all the time, but that was another story. Chapter on that. So yeah, there's been an awful lot. There's so many, and you less so now. I don't know if you find this, Michael, but now I'm just sort of like, you know, whatever. I mean, I'm more in awe of sports players, I think, now, because again, it's like magicians. I don't know how they do it to that level. With actors, I'm less so. And I just, you know, you have no time for the people that are standoffish. It's just not fun.
Yeah, and I'd say 90% of the people are cool, and, you know, they're actors.
Absolutely.
So they're nervous too, and they're, you know, worried about what they're going to be doing. And yeah, there's very few that are really rotten.
No, I mean, that's the people expect, you know, to hear horror stories. And I mean, I do eviscerate about 3 or 4 people in that book, but that chapter where I say, here's 10 A-listers. So I've worked with 9 I loved and 1 I hate was a 4 asterisk word. See you next Tuesday. And then I explain why. And I actually rehabilitate a bunch of people's images because some of them were real candidates for the 4 asterisk word. And I actually say they were great and they were lovely to work with. And then I really go full tilt on the one that wasn't. But yeah, I think that that's true. I think that people get a bad rap, the Hollywood liberal elite. I mean, it's just a joke, that whole expression. First of all, it's just nonsense. What does elite mean? But I agree, Michael. I find that most people are, just and right away. I mean, that instance where I did the Woody Allen film, and there I was really nervous because I was working with Woody Allen and Anthony Hopkins, and
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins. I was just getting dressed literally for my first scene, and there was a knock on the door, and I thought it was the first AD, and I said, "Yeah, come in," and the door opened, and Anthony Hopkins literally bounded in. He's in his mid-70s, bounded into my trailer and said, "I'm so happy you're doing this film. It's lovely. We're going to have a great time." And I said, "Oh my God, I don't know what to say. I said, I'm just in awe of you. I'm intimidated." "Oh no, don't be intimidated. I was intimidated by Woody on my first day, but don't be." He was so sweet and lovely.
Nice.
And just the whole time we gossiped and chatted, and it was like, "Oh yes, I live in Malibu. You must come down." He's just such a sweet man. Woody was different. Woody was like, it was like the invisible man, until sort of suddenly you hear a whisper in your ear. "You're quiet, would you? I'll come over here."
Oh, that's great.
Woody's a bit more like Chris Guest.
Yes, pretty quiet, and
Yeah.
yeah, Chris is definitely quiet. I know you talked in your book about your meeting with him. That was the first one, and it's always awkward pauses, and it was the same with me too, because you always interview with Christopher. You don't really audition for him, and
Yeah.
I thought, okay, I'll go in and he'll ask about things, and I thought, oh, it's very quiet in this room, and I just remember just trying to keep the conversation going, and luckily that one was about Waiting for Guffman, and I had done community theaters, so I kind of told him community theater stories growing up, and I guess he liked them. But I remember at one point, Eugene Levy walked through a door, and I went, "Oh, wow, there's Eugene Levy," and he goes, "Yes, and in the other room is Bob Hope." And you're like, well, maybe that's true. I don't know. Because you see so dry that you don't know what's happening. And I remember leaving that interview thinking, well, I don't know how that went. I couldn't tell you. And I kind of forgot about it, and then found out, about a week later I was in it. So yeah, so strange.
God, that's so great to hear the same. It was almost identical experience. I mean,
Yeah.
the dryness. I mean, first of all, he's socially really, really uncomfortable. I mean, Eugene can string a sentence two together, and he can just about muster it. He's been house trained enough. But Chris, to this day, I mean, it's staggering to me, and when I was writing with him, it took a little while to warm up, and by the time we got really into Family Tree, he was really loose. I mean, I saw a totally different Chris, when we were alone together. But even so, there would be periods when we would just sort of out dry each other, because I'm pretty fucking dry, and he's just like, Sahara Desert dry, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
And so it would just be this sort of a dry off between us. But I did see him get very silly too, which was delightful.
Yeah, over the years, I really enjoy his company now. But at the beginning, I was absolutely intimidated, and as time went on, I just feel relaxed and everything around him. Which and on our set, he pretty much, if you're there, he wants you there. What I love about his shoots, which Jim, I'm sure you say the same thing, he keeps all the suits out, so you're not having a bunch of managers or agents or studio people standing around with their arms crossed. It's because you're doing improv, and it's hard enough without a bunch of suits staring at you.
Yeah.
So he keeps it intimate and warm, and I like that very much.
Well, I think that's why all the early films could only have been made independently, because the studio would have got, and why with Family Tree and Mascots, we were so lucky to have HBO and Netflix respectively, because they just let you get on with it. I don't know if it's different now at Netflix, and HBO can be kind of interfering, but they weren't with us at all.
That's great.
The NBC Universal was more kind of interfering, but Chris had made it quite clear what the ground rules were.
Yeah.
And nobody kind of quite understands it. You know, the suits just don't understand the process, and you can explain it to them a million times and they can see the results, but they still don't get it. I mean, it's like, well, how do you mean there's no actual line? There's suggestions of jokes, but not really line, but it's not like a formal script. It's just about a third of the length, but it's condensed, and we map out, it's an architect's drawing with, you know, all the things, specifications, but no, the actual materials are provided by that. They just don't get it. They just don't get it.
Right. Yeah, it's true. I think they almost feel like the writers are being lazy for not writing dialogue or something.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The first question I got asked in England, it must be the easiest job in the world, the press said, writing an improvised comedy. And my answer was, fuck off. It's actually it takes about 6 times as long, especially with Chris, because as he says, he works at a glacial pace. But I write with Don Lake as well, and Don and I can bash out something in 3 weeks that would take at least 3 to 4 months with Chris. But it does really, it really is, because you're providing a detailed safety net for the actors, essentially. Yeah. And if you don't do that, then with improvisation, if everyone's not on the same, going in the same direction, nothing will work.
That's right.
The whole thing falls apart, because it's like, well, you can't do that because the other people did this in this scene. It just makes no sense. So
Right.
So you really do have to set the table really perfectly for the actors, and then obviously the actors bring in their genius
And then shoot the shit out of it and edit later. So
absolutely.
yeah. You know, in your book you talked about, and I forgot that because of time constraints, you and Fred Willard did your scenes for Best in Show in one day.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I remember being there and watching part of it,
Yeah.
but it was crazy. I mean, that's just so much pressure. And you're all over that film in the second half. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but as you know, it's actually almost better and easier when you're working, rather than having to sit in your trailer for 2 hours and then pick it up again. Sure. It's kind of easier to do it and work intensively like that. I just did a thing in New York for the Blacklist, and I was literally in every scene for 2 days, and that was it. And I much prefer that than going in and out and having huge gaps, and you just go bang, 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 and it's pressure, and you've got to remember all your lines. But I much prefer that than sitting around and what were we doing? What was the last scene? You know, it was so easy to have the flow of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, still a lot of pressure though, and boy, those are funny scenes.
Well, I mean, the pressure was relieved by Fred. I mean, I just literally, that talk about coattails, riding on someone's coattails. I mean, he just went off like, you know, the rambunctious, undisciplined monkey that he was. And
God bless him.
Oh God, it was just,
oh, God bless him. Yeah,
extraordinary. I know that's a massive loss,
and such a gentleman. Like when he wasn't on camera, he was so polite and so nice and so normal, and could have a great conversation. Yeah. And his wife Mary was his biggest fan, and she sort of his de facto manager, so she was usually around too sometimes, and she could remember every slight that happened to him. It'd be like, yeah, he was supposed to be on Letterman and they bumped him, and that was on, you know, like March 4th, you know, whatever year. And and I thought, wow, you really remember, like, don't piss off Mary. Yeah. So yeah. But they were a great team.
Oh, they're fantastic. I mean, I got quite close to both of them, and Mary's death was actually more of a shock because it was so sudden.
And
a couple of years before Fred. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That was really sudden.
Yeah. I never would have guessed he'd go first. She'd go first.
Yeah.
Do you each have a particular favorite moment from the guest films that you're proudest of, your respective improvs?
Respected improvs. I don't know. Everyone is so different. I guess it would depend on every. I think I'm most proud at one point on smacking Bob Balaban on the head in A Mighty Wind, just because he really and truly was annoying me in a scene, and I honestly just ran out of things to say. So I just smacked him to get him to shut up.
That was the funniest moment in the movie. That was the funniest.
Well, thank you. But that was another genius move on, I think, Christopher's part. Was he I'm kind of the liaison of the theater, and Bob was coming in, to talk about things, and I just assumed he'd be polite and pleasant, and I had no idea all he was going to do was ask me questions, and Christopher told him to do that, and I thought, oh my God, it's never going to end. So anyway, when I smacked him, everyone laughed, and so they cut out of it. That's why they cut out really fast, because everyone started laughing, including me. I started to laugh too. It's one of the very few times I laughed in a Chris Guest movie, because it's, you're there to work, and you're in character. So I didn't laugh too many times. I laughed a lot during Waiting for Guffman, because he was so, he was directing the movie, but he was also dressed up like Corky St. Clair, and so you're getting direction with this man who looks just ridiculous, but now he's serious, and he'd be talking in some of the scenes, and I'd be just biting my lip trying not to laugh. But that's not really the question you asked. But anyway, what about you, Jim? Do you have a favorite moment?
Well, I've got favorite moments of other people's stuff, and that slap is definitely the big laugh out loud moment for me in that movie. And obviously Jennifer's line to me about the trains, the model trains, which I quote in the book, is, I think, absolute genius. I mean, that is just improvisation.
Was it something like, if there weren't model train, if they didn't have model trains, there'd never be big ones? Was that?
Yeah. How like they get the idea for the big trains? Without the little trains, they would not have had the idea for the big ones. And the voice alone was making me laugh. But interestingly, my own favorite moment is actually very similar to yours. It's something that wasn't planned at all. It was when Fred, not the line where I say, yes, I remember you said that last year, which is when I literally stab him in the heart. After getting through the whole thing. It was the moment where he said something so outrageous, and someone reminded me recently, I think I was doing an interview, and they said, I think he made some sort of bad sexual thing, and I literally had no response. And so I just sort of looked at him and turned back, and you just saw in my eyes that I thought this guy was the stupidest fucking guy I'd ever seen in my life, but I'm just going to keep going. And to me, that was it was literally a turning point in my acting career, because I went, oh shit, you don't need to do anything. You can just actually sell it without a line or anything. Just react in the moment. And it was a real lesson for me. And I kind of I've tried to be more subtle ever since, but not always succeeded. I've fallen off the wagon now and again. But that for me was a real turning point. In terms of improv, but you do prepare a little stuff in your head, when you're going in. I'm sure you do, Michael, as well. I think in Mighty Wind, my speech about impacted fecal matter pressing on your rectum at dinner with Kathleen, and I'm proud of that speech, because it was just so revolting, but done so kind of straight down the line, and like other people would be interested over dinner.
Sure. Well, that's because that's your job. It's your life.
Yeah,
being a catheter salesman. Yeah, so it makes sense.
But there's so many great moments. I mean, I still think some stuff that Ed Begley has done is just his Jewish slang rant in I think it was in I can't remember which movie, it may have been For Your Consideration, was just genius. It was, he just did all these Jewish phrases back to back, and it was so phony and brilliant. But his stuff in Family Tree about the conspiracy theory stuff with Chris O'Dowd, that scene is extraordinary. I mean, what he did in that scene was extraordinary.
And then there's scenes that never make it that I think are very funny, and I wish they'd exist somewhere. I know I did one on A Mighty Wind where I was backstage with John Michael Higgins and Jane Lynch, and they were part of this peppy all-American group, but they're trying to get me to do a threesome with them, and it never made it to the movie. And it was so bizarre and so weird, because they're both kind of right next to my face and they're doing this stuff, and it's so crazy, but it was very funny.
I think given that the movies are all cult movies in their own way, it would be fantastic to have a compilation of outtakes. I mean, he and Eugene did director's commentary stuff, which was fine, but I'm in agreement, given that there were 60 hours usually shot of film, and it's 90 minutes or 88 minutes or whatever it is, most of them. I would love to see some of that outtakes, because some of the stuff you and I have never seen, you know, people's
Right.
stuff that we weren't there that day or whatever.
That's right.
In fact, a lot,
That's
there would
right.
be a ton of stuff that would be new to us. I'd love to see that.
Yeah. It used to be back in the old days when we were shooting on location, they would, you know, get a room in the hotel or something, and we could watch the dailies while eating, you know, like Chinese food or something. And that was always really cool.
Yeah.
And later we've shot here, you know, in Los Angeles or something, and they're not, you know, we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But that was fun.
I generally ask people what their favorite project they've worked on that didn't get the love they thought it deserved. I have to believe the Family Tree must be on that list.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, Family Tree got a lot of love from a very, very hardcore, passionate audience, very hardcore. And so it got love, it just didn't get renewed. And that was really a financial decision. It was literally because the show was so expensive. And they never came to us and said, can you do this at lesser budget, which we'd have absolutely been able to do. And HBO wanted to do it, BBC wanted to do it, and it was NBC Universal International who killed it and will never hire me again, obviously, for saying so. Yeah, I mean, there were just people I could tell who didn't get it, and they didn't want to invest any more time and money in it. And it's a shame because it actually got extraordinarily well reviewed too. It was in a lot of people's top 10 new shows of this, you know, season and stuff. So that would be, yeah, I'd say that of the guest stuff, that would be, I think, one that probably didn't get the recognition that it should have.
Yeah, as an actor, I worked on something for NBC called Trial and Error, and it was basically like a crime whodunit comedy. In the first season, it was John Lithgow was kind of heading it up. In the second year, it was Kristen Chenoweth, and it was very funny. And I really wish they had gotten a third season. And the critics really liked it, but it never really found its audience. And they kind of put it in the middle of summer, you know, 2 episodes back to back. And so obviously they weren't completely on board with it, but it was very funny. And I wish that would have gone bigger and at least one more season.
I diligently reviewed it every week at the AV Club.
Yeah, it was funny. It was really fun to do too. And Jeff Astroff has his new show out right now, and I hope that does well for him on Stars.
Yeah.
So, because he's a great guy.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Is there any non-Chris Guest project that leaps to mind, Jim?
Yeah, I think there's a little independent movie I did that Chris and Paul Weitz produced called See This Movie.
I was going to ask about that, actually.
Yeah, it was just 5 of us. It was John Cho, Seth Meyers, myself, Jessalyn Gilsig, and Jessica Paré. And actually, Patton Oswalt pops up in it for a scene or two. But it was essentially the 5 of us, and it was done at a minuscule budget. And it's a very art house indie film, but there's some really funny stuff in it. It was really. I think I also enjoyed the role so much because he was such a charlatan, my character. He would sleep with everything that moved. I end up having sex with all those 4 people in the movie. It's just like whatever, if it moves, he'll fuck it. And he's drunk all the time. And I don't often get to play those characters. I get to play rather more proper people or more boring people. So that was fun. And I thought that it was, you know, it was well received on the art house circuit, but that would have been a fun one to have broken out because it was a good movie.
Yeah, I've got actually to tell you and I first crossed paths on Twitter because I picked it up on DVD and tagged you and Seth when I was watching.
Oh, really?
This is, I think, the only occasion of Seth Meyers headlining a film.
Yeah. He was very, very funny in it.
Yeah, he was. I enjoyed it.
Really funny.
Yeah, that's a great cast.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And David Rosenthal directed it, who's a lovely guy, and Chris and Paul were around the whole time, and they were fantastic as well.
I guess it's for both of you as well. What do you remember about your first on-camera experience?
Oh, well, my first on-camera thing was a very low-budget movie called The Making of and God Spoke, which was a fake documentary oddly enough, and it was about the making of the Bible, and it was actually a very funny little movie, but it was shot quickly, and I remember I wore a Bob's Big Boy hat, which I really liked, and they said, "Well, you can't wear that because it's product placement." I said, "Oh no," and I didn't quite understand that, and I said, "No, I think I bought it. It's fine," and I wore it the whole movie, and I think it was such a low budget thing they finally just didn't care. But yeah, it was one of those movies where you get your friends to be in it, and I kind of knew, I knew Eve Plum from the Brady Bunch, and so I got her to play Mrs. Noah, and it was a crazy cast, but it was really fun. It was a good time, and it turned out pretty good, I thought. But it was rush. And I got paid $50 a day. I remember that. How about you, Jim?
Well, it was my first film TV job. Was the first time I've ever been on camera. I just moved out to LA, and I was staying at the infamous Oakwood Apartments, where
Yes.
the way station for all actors in Toluca Lake. And I got cast in this Western, and it was a drama role. And I didn't, of course, with the audition, they say, "Can you ride?" Yeah, absolutely. Never been on a horse in my life, not once. And so I got the role, and then I got a call immediately after my agent said, "You got the role." And it was the production officer said, "We booked these riding lessons for you." Because they said, "We knew you were lying about riding." So I did the riding lessons. But the night before, I turned on the TV, and just because I was killing time, and I saw the very last 3 minutes of a show called Charles in Charge with the lunatic who calls himself Scott Baio. Yeah. And it was dreadful, this awful show. And this actress came on at the end who was just fantastic. I just thought, who is she? She's great. She had like 3 or 4 lines, and she just immediately popped. And I was like, and I was too late to write her name down. I couldn't get the credits and stuff. And anyway, the next day I go to show up on this set of Wild Side, and I think Howard Rawlins was in, I can't remember. It was a mad show. And I'm sitting on a horse doing this stupid stuff. And who should appear but this actress who I'd just seen the night before. And it was Meg Ryan. And she was a regular on the show. And we started chatting. And I said, "I just saw you on this thing." And it turns out she was staying in the Oakwood Apartments. She just moved out to New York exactly the same time as me. We had the same agent. And this was her first kind of, I think she'd been in soap operas before that in New York. And this was her first kind of LA job. And she was a regular on the series, and thereafter our paths diverged somewhat.
Oh, yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah,
I think that, well, if you count being an extra, I was an extra on The Young and the Restless.
Oh my God.
And I was also an extra on Who's the Boss with Tony Danza. And I remember that one specifically because we were in a ski chalet supposedly, and the woman next to me wouldn't talk to me at all. She just was very aloof until the cameras rolled, and then she just started talking when you're not supposed to. And she had this crazy backstory about, we're going to go back up to our room and have a jacuzzi, and meanwhile I'm just looking around going, "Please, we're going to get in trouble. Like, stop talking." And then the second the cameras stopped rolling, then she just wouldn't talk to me again. It was crazy.
Wow.
A lot of fun.
Wow.
And all I remember about The Young and the Restless is I was in a crowd for a junior fashion show. And I remember shouting like, "Oh, you're really hot." And I never got asked back. So that was the end of that.
That was Lassie.
It was like,
never shout at the dog.
No, shout at the dog.
That's funny. Actually, one of the stars of Wild Side I had as a guest on here.
Really?
Yeah, Kurt Fuller.
Oh yeah, Kurt Fuller.
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, and he has fond memories of working with Meg too. She was his boss on the show, actually.
Oh, right.
Let's see. Do you have any questions for each other? I want to ask that.
Oh, that was an awkward pause there. That was an awkward pause.
It was a very, very awkward pause. Yes.
Yeah, that was like I've run out of things to ask them now.
No. I have
Jim-
plenty of things to ask about, but I like to have the interaction between the two of you too.
Jim, do you have a favorite film that you wrote?
Yeah, the films, the favorite ones that I've written haven't been made. There's no question. Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple recently. I've got one that keeps threatening to get made, but Jeremy Irons is supposed to be in with Minnie Driver, and that's supposed to start this April, and then it's been bumped again. We were going to shoot before COVID, so that's I guess kind of an English Seabiscuit kind of racehorse story, set in the UK. It's a lovely story of a second chance, and it transcends the genre of sports or racing movie, and about the relationship between horse and man, and how it kept this man alive who was dying, and he became his greatest triumph. So it's kind of a cross between Chariots of Fire and, you know, that kind of feel of King's Speech, that kind of feel good, inspirational, heroic thing. So that I'm really proud of, and I've just, yeah, there's 3 or 4, but those are the ones. Oddly, the things that got made were not usually my passion projects. I mean, some all there, and then they got fucked up. But sorry,
I forgot that you wrote the story for the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah, the Tooth Fairy. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I remember I auditioned to play. I think it was the Rock's sidekick.
Oh yeah.
In it. and I remember when I went to the audition, it went fine, and then they asked, "How tall are you?" And for the life of me, I decided to add height. So I said, like, "Oh, I'm 6'2" or something." I thought, why in the world would you? They don't want you to be larger than the Rock.
Although they did
stupid.
They did end up casting the tallest man in show business.
Did they? Good. Oh, good.
Stephen Merchant.
Well, then maybe I should have lied and gone even higher.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I wanted to be in it too, and they wouldn't let me. I said, I wrote this fucking thing. They wouldn't let me. And I said, can I be one of the, you know, there's Julie Andrews and Stephen Merchant. Obviously in Fairyland, they're all English, and they said that someone at Fox said, we've already got too many old British fairies in the movie. And I said, there's 3 lawsuits right there. That's 3 lawsuits. It's discrimination on 3 fronts. Oh.
Wow. Yeah, boy. No respect for the writers. I'll tell you.
No respect whatsoever. And completely my concept and idea, the whole thing. Nothing. They did let me visit the set for a couple of days.
That's nice of them.
Yeah.
Did they fly you out at least, or were you
They
already
did.
there?
I mean, that was the thing I say about The Rock in the book. I mean, I'd never met him, and I went up to the set, and the first thing someone said to me is, "What do you do on the movie?" And I said, "I'm executive producer." And they said, "What does that mean?" And I said, "Well, it can mean different things on different movies. In this instance, it means I'm here for 2 days. And when anyone asks me what I do, I just tell them I'm an executive producer." They said, "Oh, okay." And then I went on the set, and The Rock was Dwayne, as he's not known as The Rock anymore. Dwayne stopped everything and gathered everybody around, cast and crew, and it was an extraordinary moment, because never happens, as you know, Michael, as a writer, even in television where the writer producer is king. And he said, I want you to all meet the person who's responsible for us all being here and having a job." And I couldn't believe that he went, I mean,
That's
so
really cool.
far and above the Call of Duty. I mean, what
That's
a
really
stand-up.
cool.
What a stand-up guy.
Yeah, that's
and he
great.
was delightful in the movie too.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
You guys find it difficult to bounce between writing and acting?
Oh, I don't know. It's hard to do both at the same time, for sure. Like, if I've been in a lot of writers' rooms for TV, and they're not thrilled if you say, "Hey, I want to go do something for 3 weeks," because you have a job there, obviously. And if you leave, you know, other people have to take on your responsibilities. So I totally get that. So I try to do the acting when I'm not writing. I made the decision around in 2019 to concentrate more on writing, and then on acting. Then of course we had COVID, so not the greatest plan in the world. Anyway, so But what do you? How about you, Jim? Would you
Yeah,
have
the
one
one
that you
thing
like?
you couldn't do in lockdown, acting.
Right. Yeah, I know.
I'll do my one-man show for me.
Yes.
I don't know about you, Michael, but I don't write from. I mean, I remember having this conversation with Jason Segel, who said he would never have had an acting career if he hadn't written great roles for himself, and that he said it was entirely to do with that. He said I was not getting cast from auditions and stuff. So, they're very, very different sides of my brain for me, and I never write. I just write what I want to write, and then afterwards I go, oh, what can I play? And I've got to figure that out to try and stop doing that. But
Yeah, me too. I had the same problem.
yeah, it is really different, isn't it? Because you're not thinking in those terms. You're thinking on the bigger picture.
Right. And I've always been that way, and I need to stop.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why we're ensemble, people, and probably why we're being described in this podcast as journeymen. We're journeymen.
Oh, okay.
And I'm a veteran journeyman.
Oh, are you?
I think so. They referred to me recently as a veteran, and I was like,
oh,
oh yeah, I am. Can't really argue with that.
Yeah, I know. That's how it goes. But it is, I have to say, the thing about acting, which is nice, is you arrive and like whatever, even the thing I'm doing now, my hair color is not quite right. And so they have to, by hand make it better. And I'm thinking, well, that's going to take a lot of time. That's going to take a lot of time. And then part of me goes, I don't have to worry about that. That's not my problem. That's their problem. And I'm not, I'm not a producer on this. I don't have to worry about the times. And so anyway.
Don't you feel like acting is almost like a vacation now? I mean,
sometimes it can be, yeah.
I mean, occasionally it's not, but I feel like this is a break from being stuck at the computer and having to actually do real work. Because you learn your lines, but yeah,
especially after COVID, to actually be around people again is like, wow, this is fantastic. Yeah, like I'm actually seeing people in person and like, hanging out. And I'm shooting something right now in Puerto Rico, so there's a lot of wind, so you don't have to wear your mask as much if you're outdoors. So it's great. Wow. Yeah.
Is that where you are now?
No, I'm in Los Angeles, but yeah, I'm going back and forth. But
wow.
Yeah. So yeah, that part of it's fun.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys do any voice acting during the course of the pandemic? I feel it's what a lot of people ended up doing.
Yeah, I did too. I did for a show called Bless the Hearts, which was on Fox, and then they decided they're not doing it anymore. Oh. But at least for now. Yeah. But that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Did you record at home? I had to set up. They sent me the equipment, and I had to record. And I did my whole audio book the same way. I had to record it in my walk-in closet, my bedroom closet, because it's the one area. Like this room, it's a bit echoey because it's got an arch ceiling or whatever, vaulted ceiling, and I kind of got the whole thing set up. It almost became a little mini studio in my walk-in closet. So it's kind of it was. I was amazed how effective it was. But
we had to do the dialogue replacement for. I did a movie called Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, starring Kristen Wiig, right, and Jamie Dornan and Annie Mumolo, right before COVID started, but then we had to do the dialogue replacement during COVID. So it was the same thing. They bring all this equipment that you set up, and what you would normally do in a sound studio, you're doing in your your bedroom. It was so strange, and you're trying to get it when the garbage can people aren't going by, and I mean it's just a lot, and it didn't it was crazy, but kind of fun and weird.
It is. I mean, you get so kind of used to not having to leave the house. You order everything online. You get your groceries, everything. I need some Scotch tape. I'll order it. Bang! It's getting here the next day. So it kind of, you get a bit sort of insular. Insular is the word I think I'm looking for. I hope it is.
And then later in COVID, when they were like, "Well, are you comfortable going into a studio to do things?" And I thought, absolutely, because they, everything's hosed down and, sanitized a million times a day. I thought, yes, and you walk through back, they'd have you walk through back hallways and all this stuff, so you never meet anybody. And but yeah, that was a lot easier than setting it up myself.
Yeah. And who doesn't like a good hosing down?
Well, they didn't nose down me.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's funny you say about the noises, because you suddenly are aware. I looked up on, like, so how long is it going to take me to do this audiobook? It's 300 fucking pages. And I looked up and it said, well, for an 8-hour book, 3 issues should be about 8 hours roughly. And that should take you, I think it was, they said 14 hours to record. Well, yes, if you've got an engineer and a studio and a director, it took me at least 60 hours to do, at least. Partly because one day there'd be the helicopters go, so then there'd be the garbage guy, then there would be the leaf blower. Then my stomach decided it was going to be rumbling all day. And so I had to talk louder or faster to try and cover it. And then I'd play it back and go, nope, I heard, all through the, so it's always something. And then it ended up doing it in like sentences almost. So, oh, Christ almighty, the doorbell. And then, oh, I forgot to turn that phone off. It's crazy.
But you don't have to edit yourself, right? You just do a big long thing and then they do it later? Or how does
I
that
did
work?
sort of edit it. Yeah, I had to kind of, I mean, well, yeah, I did. I mean, I think they did engineer it afterwards, but they said, actually it's in pretty good shape. So I had to present them what I thought was the way it should be. What I wanted them to do is actually put some air back into it, because I thought some of my cuts were too close. So there wasn't enough time to absorb something at the end of a paragraph before I was into the next one. That I didn't really master that part of the editing, and I don't know if they did or not, because I haven't listened to it. But I don't know. It was a hell of an experience. I mean, I've done one book on tape before. It was like for Disney, and it took me half an hour. It was so short as a kid's thing. It's a hell of an endurance game.
Yeah. Well, but you're raising money for charity, and you did a good job.
Oh, thank you. I am raising money for charity. That's good of you to mention.
Were you thinking about that every time you goofed up?
I did have the other day. I thought, am I going to live to regret this? When I saw it was #1 for the 4th week running in movie industry books, I'm like, I haven't seen any numbers yet on any figures, but was this too altruistic? No, it wasn't. I wrote it. I didn't write it to make money. I mean, I wrote it to make money, but I didn't write to make me money. I wrote it because I wanted to write it.
Right.
That's so cool. It's very funny. It's really good.
Thank you.
Oh, Jim, I did actually want to ask you about the experience of doing the RUTLES 2.
Oh, the RUTLES 2, yeah. One of the first things I did with Eric.
Yeah.
Well, it probably is offensive now, what I did. It was probably offensive because I played, he wanted this guy to be ridiculously gay and camp. And that's, it was, when I look back at it now, and Eric always encourages you to go further than you should. And it was just, and Catherine was in it too, Catherine O'Hara. And she said she couldn't watch us shooting it because she said it was just, she was laughing so loud. It was so grotesque, the performance. Leggy Mountbatten's gay lover. But I think I have a feeling if I was to watch that back now, I would censor myself and say, please don't erase that from all recorded memory. It's offensive. It's offensive. But, who hasn't been offensive in one time or another?
Sure.
Michael,
by the way, sorry to just talking offensive.
Please.
I had the most bizarre. I mean, luckily the reviews all been good. I got one review that said, "I've enjoyed the book. It's very funny and that, but I have one big gripe." They said, "I couldn't stand that he kept referring to people's weight in the book," and I called the publisher and said, did they read my book or someone else's? And they said found it very offensive. And I had to comb through, and I found a couple of minor references to somebody being large but really innocuous. I mean, just absolutely innocuous. And they seized on that. And I think it's all part of this sort of cancel. I read a thing about a writer shouldn't describe a woman physically if he's a male, because that's objectivity. And it's like, well, now we're not allowed to do physical descriptions of people. I mean, it's insane. And I can only imagine that this must have struck a chord or something. But I mean, anyway, sorry. I
Well, I
digress.
didn't like it, and I thought you needed to know.
Well,
So
I
it
mean,
wasn't. It wasn't
listen,
me. It
listen.
wasn't me.
If someone said no, it was a woman, and it's a young woman. If someone had said to me, "There's way too much scatological humor in it, and way too much name dropping," I'd go, "Yep, absolutely, yep, no question." But that one was such a puzzle to me. Such a
Oh,
puzzle.
you said, by the way, too, Jim, on your thing, which was very strange. You did a play after being successful in New York. You did it out here, or San Francisco, and that the writer later wrote a book about how awful you were in the thing. I thought, and they changed your name.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no, it was Simon Gray. I'll name him, shame him. He was the drunk, a very famous British playwright. It was in LA. I was just sort of struggling to get film and TV work, so I got cast in this play, and it was just toxic from the word go. The director gave you notes saying, "Let me give you a basic acting lesson here." He would preface every note, and then the producer was the most neurotic. And I took over a role. They fired someone, and you go, "How would you fire someone? We're doing this for no money. It's equity waiver. It's 99 seats." And they fired people right, left, and center. And I went in because I was desperate just to do something. And it was just the most toxic. I was sort of feeling my way in because everyone had rehearsed for at least a week, 2 weeks. And after 2 days rehearsal, the producer came to my apartment on a Saturday morning and said, "I'm just not seeing it up there." And I said, "I'm sorry?" He said, "No, I'm just not seeing it, the performance." And I said, "Well, no, it's day 2 or 3. He said, "I only have it on," we had a mutual friend, "I only had it on so-and-so's word that you're a good actor." And I should have quit. I should have quit then. That was when I should have quit. I stayed another week to 10 days, and my performance just went from bad to really bad to just absolutely impossibly awful, because I was so mortified at the way people were being treated, and I felt so uncomfortable. And then I went to Simon Gray, who offered me a drink at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I said, "No, thanks. I just want to tell you that I'm doing something I've never done in my life before. I'm not doing the show. I'm quitting. And you should get Nathan Lane to do it, because Nathan's a pal of yours, a pal of mine, and he did this role at the Long Wharf in Connecticut. So I'm sure he'll do it." And we parted on perfect terms. And then he wrote this poisonous book, just slamming everybody connected with the production, the people that put it on, the this and that. And he actually did give me a pseudonym, but just was so nasty about me and my attitude and how he fired me. And I'm like, what? Well, hang on a minute. I fucking left the show, and you are now rewriting. So yes, that was, yeah, sorry, you got me on a rant there.
Oh, but yeah, and you'd just been on Broadway for a couple of years.
Oh,
so for someone to go like, "I've heard from someone that you were a good actor," I thought like, well, yeah, I guess so.
My last job, I had my name above the title on Broadway. It was insane. But I did get revenge, as I talk about in the book. I had someone, he called me Ted Larkins. That was Ted Larkins. That was my pseudonym. And I had a friend of mine who lived in Berkeley, because I wanted the postmarks to be not LA, who said he was an actor called Ted Larkins, and that this book had ruined his life and his career. And he was going to take action for a start, but he was also going to take personal action. And this exchange went on for a while, and you could tell that Simon Gray was getting really nervous. And I said, "I'm looking forward to coming to London when we can have a cozy little chat, if you know what I mean." It was shameless. And then I kind of finally dropped it. I got bored with it, but I'm hoping he was looking over his shoulder for the last few years of his miserable fucking life. Sorry, I'm swearing a lot. Is that okay on this show?
It's quite all right.
But
that was such a great thing on the book.
I do in real life. I'm a bit of a potty mouth. That's being British.
I have no complaints.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
It's a lack of the command of English language and punctuation.
Made me laugh so much. I'd be furious if I found out that somebody wrote about some crappy play I was in and that blamed me for it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, luckily he slammed everybody else, but well, not luckily, but and then he did the same thing to Stephen Fry. They were friends, and he made his life miserable. And Stephen literally walked off the play after 3 days and hid out in Europe, just disappeared.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been involved in a couple of the like 99 seat or less. There's places here for like 60
Yeah.
seats or what have you. And usually these playwrights will blame the actors when it's their first time even writing something. And so, you know, it's not even a good playwright, and they're just saying awful things about the actors. And you're like, no, it's probably the words. But anyway, that's how it goes. Excuse me, I'm coughing. Sorry.
Heimlich.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's COVID either. I think it's just some breakfast.
Breakfast.
Yeah.
It's breakfast or COVID. I'm not sure which.
It could be cottage
I'm
cheese
sure a
or
doctor will
COVID.
tell me. A doctor will let me know.
Or a pretzel from yesterday or finding its way back up the pipe. No,
Just the last thing I wanted to ask you, Michael, was how did you find your way into Serenity?
Oh, Joss Whedon. That was another. We're talking about like comedy people. I auditioned for it, and he later said he wanted to have someone cast as kind of the villainous role to be someone not known for that. And that's how I played it. I played it like a guy doing his job. And then there's, you know, an intruder in my place, and I end up committing Harry Carey. Very crazy scene, and it was a lot of fun to shoot. But that was his thing, is that he wanted to cast somebody that wouldn't be known as particularly evil or something like that. That's how it happened.
Clearly doesn't know you.
Yeah, he doesn't know me at all. And that was a fun job because Nathan Fillion, who was the star of it, we shot it at Universal Studios, and when we weren't doing our stuff, we would sneak onto Universal Tour and ride the rides.
Oh, great.
That was really fun. That was a great job. Really fun.
Fantastic.
We're at the hour mark. I don't want to keep you guys any longer. I know you got things to do. But
well, thanks so much, Will.
Absolutely. I appreciate you both doing this. Like I say, it's fun to have two actors bantering back and forth a bit, and I sneak in a question or two here and there.
Yeah,
it was great.
I'm thrilled. I've just been on this press thing talking about myself, but I'm so sick of talking about the book and myself that it's lovely to have someone to bounce off. It's like, you know.
Well, the book is fantastic, and people should read it because
I'll put a link actually to the book in the description on YouTube.
Oh my goodness, it's so good and so easy to read. It's just, and he names names, which is always fun.
It's a good beach read. It's a good beach read, I think.
Yes.
Excellent.
All right.
Well, thanks so much, you guys. Have a good day.
Thank you. It's lovely to see you, Michael. Lovely to meet you, Will. Yeah.
And you too, Will. Good to see you again.
You as well.
Have a good one, everybody. Bye.
You guys. See ya.